So let's start the live stream. I guess I'm visible perfectly and I'm perfectly audible. Although I'm not visible, but still. Repeat. Okay. So इसमें सब चीज इम्पोर्टेंट जो इम्पोर्टेंट है ना सब कुछ है. So इसमें बहुत मेहनत करा है मैंने इसको प्रिपेयर करने में इस PDF. ओके. देखो, Franz was late for school because he was afraid of being scolded for not preparing the lesson on participles. He initially thought of bunking but resisted the temptation. मेरे पे ना इससे better answer है. देखो, Franz was late for school and feared being scolded. He had not learned his lesson on participles, which made him anxious. Initially, he thought of running away and spending the day outdoors since the weather was warm and bright. He was tempted to enjoy the chirping of birds and watch Prussian soldiers drilling. However, he overcome his However, he overcome his temptation and rushed to school. Franz Franz noticed Franz noticed unusual silence. Franz noticed unusual silence in the school, which was different from the usual noisy atmosphere. ठीक है, everything was as quiet as Sunday morning. M. Hamel was dressed differently in his green coat, frilled shirt, and black silk cap, which he usually wore in only on inspection and prize days. The villagers attended the class as a mark of respect for M. Hamel's 40 years of faithful service and to show their sorrow for not attending the school earlier. M. Hamel announced that this was the last French lesson because an order from Berlin stated that only German would be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. Okay. Franz felt guilty for not learning his lessons properly. He regretted taking school for granted and wished he had studied harder. Franz was late for school. Franz was late for school because he was afraid of being scolded for not preparing the lesson on participles. He initially thought of bunking but resisted the temptation. M. Hamel M. Hamel did not scold Franz, but instead said he should feel bad for not learning. He should feel bad for not learning. He explained that people always think they have time, but the time had now run out. As the last lesson is beautifully bring last lesson beautifully brings out the human tendency to postpone the learning of things, although in short, procrastination. Hamel blamed everyone, the parents for making their children work instead of sending them to school, and even himself for giving unnecessary holidays so that he can go and do fishing, such stuff. Okay. Hamel praised the French language, calling it the most beautiful, clear, and logical language. He urged everyone to guard it because as long as they held onto their language, they had the key to freedom. He urged everyone to guard it because as long as they held onto their language, they had the key to freedom. Franz realized how well he understood the grammar lesson. When M. Hamel explained it with patience, he regretted not paying attention earlier. During the lesson, the student wrote France Alsace France in beautiful handwriting, and the classroom was silent except for the scratching of pens. M. Hamel was deeply emotional but had the courage to teach till the last moment. If it broke his heart to leave the school where he had worked for 40 years. The church clock struck 12, and the Prussian soldiers were sorry, and the Prussian soldiers were seen marching. M. Hamel tried to speak but was choked with emotion. M. Hamel wrote Live la France, long life France on the blackboard, then dismissed the class with a silent gesture unable to speak. What was France expected to be prepared with school with for school that day? He was expected to be prepared with participles, but he did not know them. What did Franz notice that was unusual about the school that day? Usually there was a great bustle, but that day everything was silent like a Sunday morning. You have to mention like a Sunday morning, okay? So that you can gain more attention of the teacher or the examiner. Okay. What had been put on the bulletin board? An order had come and an order had come from Berlin that only German would be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. Franz is afraid of going to school as he had not learned participles. He wants to enjoy the beauty of nature but resists. The bulletin board had all bad news, including lost battles and orders from the commanding officers. The bulletin board, ये याद करो, the bulletin board had all the bad news. The bulletin board had all bad news, including lost battles and orders from the commanding officers. The bulletin board had all bad news, including lost battles and the orders from the commanding officers. Changes in school. Instead of unusual noisy classroom, it was it was as sorry It was as quiet as Sunday morning. Instead of usual noisy classroom, it was as quiet as Sunday morning. M. Hamel was dressed in his Sunday best. Villager occupied the last benches to pay tribute to M. Hamel. This was the last French lesson. He blamed himself, parents, and students for neglecting their language. Always keep the mother tongue close to your heart, as it is the key to prison of slavery. ये वाला आपको लाइक ये वाली आपको लाइन लिख के आनी है, लिखोगे एग्जामिनर खुश, ऐसा ऐसा करना है ना, लिखोगे ना आप ऐसा तो बड़ा प्यारा वो पड़ जाती है। रुको वेट, लेट मी हाईलाइट इट परफेक्टली, है ना, परफेक्टली हाईलाइट कर देते हैं इसे। ये कैसे चलता है? आई एम वेरी कंफ्यूज्ड। छी, बड़ा ही बेकार है यार। Always keep the mother tongue close to your heart, as it is the key to the prison of slavery. Always keep your mother tongue close to your heart. Speak. Say. Always close the mother tongue close to your heart. Always keep the mother tongue close to your heart. Always keep the mother tongue close to your heart. Always keep the mother tongue close to your heart, as this as it is the it is the key to the prison of slavery. As it is the key to the prison of slavery. Slavery. Okay, wait, slavery. Wait, I can't see, yaar. Why I can't click here? It's okay if I can't. All right. Okay, I can't because. Hmm. All right. Always keep the mother tongue. Always keep the mother tongue close to your heart, as it is the key to the prison of slavery. Okay. Atmosphere in class. Everyone studied with utmost sincerity. With utmost sincerity. France wondered if Prussians could force pigeons to coo in German too, to sing in German too. M. Hamel, overwhelmed with emotions, wrote on the blackboard, "Long live France," and dismissed the class. Okay. France wondered if the Prussians would force pigeons to coo in the German. Always keep the mother tongue close to your heart, as it is the key to the prison of slavery. Always keep the mother tongue close to your heart, as it is the key to the prison of slavery. What a thunderclap these words were, which words shocked and surprised little Franz. M. Hamel announced that it was his last French lesson. Franz was shocked and, and felt guilty for neglecting his language. What announcement did M. Hamel make? What was its impact on France? M. Hamel declared, M. Hamel, what did he do? Ah, shit, yaar, shit, wait. M. Hamel declared that it was their last French lesson. Franz realized that he had wasted time and now felt sorry. He has no longer found books a nuisance and was painted at M. Hamel's departure. The story highlights the human tendency to postpone learning, thinking there is always time. The people of Alsace and Lorraine realized their mistakes of not valuing their language and become victims of linguistic chauvinism. It also portrays the brutality of war, which make people insensitive to human emotions and culture. M. Hamel, a strict, honest, and passionate French teacher proud of his language. Franz, a careless, observant, and sensitive student who realizes the importance of learning only when it is too late. Franz was expected to be prepared with participles, but he had not learned them and was scared of being scolded by M. Hamel. The usual bustle and the usual hustle bustle was missing. Everything was as silent as Sunday morning. Am Hamel was dressed in his best Sunday best green coat, frilled shirt, and black silk hat. The villagers were sitting on the back benches to pay their respects to M. Hamel. The villagers were sitting on the back benches to pay their respects to M. Hamel. The bulletin board in the town hall was where all the bad news from the war displayed: lost best battles, orders from the commanding officers, and new rules by the Prussians. The bulletin board in the town hall was where all the bad news from the war was displayed: lost battles, orders from the commanding officers, and new rules by the Prussians. What announcement did M. Hamel make? How did it affect France? M. Hamel announced that it was his last French lesson, as from the next day only German would be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. France France was shocked and regretted not learning his language earlier. He realized that its importance only when he was about to lose it. What did M. Hamel say about the importance of language? He said that one's language is key to the freedom, that as long as people hold on to their language, they remain free. He called French the most beautiful, clearest, and most logical language. जो मैं ऐसा स्क्रीनशॉट ले रही हूँ ये बहुत ही ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है. He said that one's language is key to freedom as long as people hold on to their language, they remain free. Um, at the end of the lesson, M. Hamel, overcome with emotions, writes Viva la France on the blackboard. This phrase, meaning long live France, symbolizes his deep love for his country and his defiance against the Prussian rule. It reflects his patriotism and silent protest against the imposition of the German language in Alsace. By writing these words, M. Hamel leaves a lasting impression on his students, reminding them to hold on to their language and heritage despite foreign rule. At the end of lesson, at the end of the lesson, M. Hamel overcome with emotions writes M. Hamel overcome with emotions. At the end of the lesson, M. Hamel, overcome with emotions, writes Vive la France on the blackboard. This phrase, meaning long live France, symbolizes his deep love for his country and his defense against the Prussian rule. It reflects his patriotism, and silent protest against the opposition of the German language in Alsace. Imposition of the German language in Alsace. By writing this word, foreign rule. What is the theme of the last lesson? The story conveys the importance. The story conveys the importance. The story conveys the importance of language and education. It highlights the human tendency to postpone learning, assuming there will always be more time. People of Alsace realized too late that they should have valued their mother tongue. This poet also portrays linguistic chauvinism. थोड़ा linguistic नहीं लिख पता नहीं क्या लिखा हुआ है, sorry, मतलब स्पेलिंग गलत है, ठीक है। linguistic chauvinism की जगह पता नहीं क्या ही लिख दिया है, थोड़ा सा ना वो एरर हो जाता है, लाइक व्हेन यू कॉपी एंड पेस्ट, ठीक है, ऐसा जैसे पीडीएफ बनाने के लिए ना, इसलिए दैट्स व्हाई, सॉरी। लिंग्विस्टिक चॉविनिज्म एट LIGLIN, रुको यार मैं लिख ही दूं, फिर आप रौला पाओगे कि मैम ऐसे कर सही हो आप। लिंग्विस्टिक, आई एम राइटिंग विद माय फिंगर्स, ठीक है, सो डोंट जज मी, ठीक है। This story portrays linguistic chauvinism where a dominant power a dominant where a dominant power where a dominant power, Prussia, imposes its language on others, suppressing their culture and identity. Additionally, the story reflects on the brutality of war, which makes people insensitive to human emotion and heritage. Describe the character of M. Hamel. चलो देखिए एम हेमल जी का कैरेक्टर हमारे, देखते हैं चलो। एम हेमल इज अ M. Hamel is a strict yet kind hearted teacher who is deeply passionate about the French language. Initially, he is portrayed as disciplinarian, often scolding students for their mistakes. However, in the last lesson, he expresses deep regret for not being stricter and acknowledges his own fault in the student's poor language of French. Despite knowing he is leaving, he teaches with great dedication. Initially, he is portrayed as disciplinarian, often scolding students for their mistakes. However, in his last lesson, he expresses deep regret for not being stricter and acknowledges his own faults in the students' poor knowledge of French. Despite knowing he is leaving, he teaches with great dedication and encourages the students to value their mother tongue. His final gesture of writing Viva la France on the blackboard shows his patriotism and love for the country. Hmm. This is very important question. So kind of important question. What usual changes did France notice in school that day? France noticed several unusual changes in the school that day. Usually, the school was filled with noise, opening and closing of desks, students repeating lessons in unison, like aloud. Sorry, students repeating lessons aloud, and the teacher's ruler tapping on the desk. However, that day everything was silent like a Sunday morning. M. Hamel, the French teacher, was dressed in Sunday best, wearing a green coat, frilled shirt, and a black silk hat. All these three things are embroidered only, okay, which he wore on only on special occasion. The biggest surprise was that the back benches were occupied by villagers, including Hauser, the postmaster, and others who had come to pay their respects to M. Hamel. The solemn atmosphere made France realize that something important was happening. ठीक है, पहला क्या हुआ कि usually the school was filled with noise, the opening and closing of desks, students repeating lessons in unison very loudly, and the teachers or ruler tapping on the desk. But that day, everything was silent like a Sunday morning. M. Hamel, the French teacher, was dressed in his Sunday best, wearing a green coat, frilled shirt, and black silk hat. ठीक है? How did France react when he heard that this was the last lesson in French? When M. Hamel, okay, थोड़ा सा कलर चेंज करें, है महाराजा जी, ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ थोड़ा सा कलर चेंज करते हैं, थोड़ा सा और लाइट बनाने का सोच रहे हैं, येलो सा हो जाता है ना थोड़ा, यार ये ब्लू बड़ा प्यारा लग रहा है ना, ब्लू बड़ा प्यारा सा नहीं, प्यारा नहीं लग रहा है, देखो ना, ठीक है. M. Hamel announced that M. Hamel announced that this was their last French lesson. Franz was shocked and regretful. He suddenly realized how much time he had wasted in avoiding studies. Until then, he had always found French difficult and considered book as nuisance. But now he wished he had learned the language properly. He felt guilty for chasing birds' eggs, playing in the fields, and wasting time instead of studying. For the first time, he wanted to impress M. Hamel with his knowledge. He also understood why villagers had come to school to express gratitude to M. Hamel and to show solidarity with their lost country. What reason did M. Hamel poor give for the students' poor knowledge of the French? M. Hamel blamed students, parents, and himself for neglecting the French language. He said that people of Alsace had always postponed learning, thinking there was plenty of time. However, now it was too late to make up their lost learning. He criticized the parents for sending the children to work on farm or in mills instead of school. He also admitted his own fault, saying that he often gave holidays or sent students to water his plants whenever he wanted to go to fishing. M. Hamill regretted these actions, realizing that they had contributed to the students' weak grasp of their mother tongue. What message did M. Hamill give about the French language? M. Hamill passionately expresses his love for the French language, calling it the most beautiful, clear, and logical language in the world. He emphasizes that people must keep their mother tongue close to their heart because it is the key to their identity and freedom. He warns that when a nation loses its language, it becomes enslaved. The Prussians had imposed German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. This message make France and the villager realize the importance of preserving their cultural identity. Amhamel expresses his love for the French language, calling it the most beautiful, clear, and logical language in the world. He emphasizes that people must always keep their mother tongue close to their hearts because it is the key to their identity and freedom. He warns that when a nation loses its language, it becomes enslaved. Just as the Prussians had imposed German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. This message makes France and the villager realize the importance of preserving their cultural identity. What a thunderclap these words were! The words this is your last French lesson shocked France because he realized he was losing his language. What was France's immediate reaction? Guilty, sad, and regretful for not learning French earlier. Why was the lesson being discontinued? Because the Prussians had banned French in Alsace and Lorraine, imposed only German in schools. MML is a strict, disciplined, and but kind teacher. Strict भी है, disciplined भी है, but kind भी है. Proud of his language and country, realizes his own fault in not being strict enough. Becomes emotional and patriotic, writing Viva la France on the blackboard before leaving. A carefree, lazy student who hates grammar, France. He realizes his past mistakes when he heard the last lesson. Becomes emotional and patriotic by the end. What did okay? Why were some elderly persons occupying the back benches that day? Who were sitting on the last benches? Why were they? ठीक है, देखो तीन टाइप हो गए, दो मतलब दो, अच्छा okay, दो सेट में होगा ना. The elderly people occupied the back benches to show their respect for MML and the French language. They regretted not having learned their language when they had the chance. Why France did not want to go to school that day? France had not prepared his lesson on participles and feared being scolded by M. Himmel. Additionally, the bright weather and the chirping birds outside tempting him to skip the school. What did Franz wonder about when he entered the class that day? Franz was surprised that M. Hamel did not scold him for being late. He also found that the classroom unusually quiet and was confused by the presence of village elders in the last benches. Why did M. Hamel write Viva la France on the blackboard? M. Hamel wrote Viva la France on the blackboard as an expression of his deep love, as an expression as an expression of his deep love for his country and its language. He was overwhelmed with emotions and could not find the words to express himself. So he wrote it as his final message. Validate why M. Hamel did not scold Franz for being late. Since it was his last working day, M. Hamel was filled with sadness and wanted to be kind. He did not scold Franz, instead, focused on learning with utmost sincerity. We have got ये वाला क्वेश्चन भी important है. We have got a deal to approach ourselves with. M. Hamel made this statement because he believed that the people of Alsace and Lorraine had neglected their own language. Parents sent their children to work instead of school, and he himself had not been very strict about their education. This regret was shared by everyone present in the classroom. What was the impact of the last lesson on France? France felt guilty time on fun activities like sliding on the Saar and chasing birds' eggs. He suddenly found his grammar lessons easy and wished he could impress MML. He realized the value of language and patriotism. The scene in this class made him emotional, and when as he saw villagers MML sorrow and the loss of his identity. Agree. Yes, MML blames everyone. Students for procrastinating and wasting time, parents for sending their children to work instead of school, himself for giving unnecessary holidays and not being strict. He makes them realize that language he make them realize that language should be valued before it is lost forever. How does the last lesson highlight linguistic chauvinism? Linguistic chauvinism is the belief that one language is superior to another. ये अभी हो नहीं रहा है, देखो आपने देखा नहीं है इतना ज़्यादा सोशल मीडिया में चल रहा है. See Tamil, only English. I don't know about it. Okay, बाकी I don't know. I don't have much knowledge about this type of जो भी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट चल रहा है, ठीक है. तो यही है लिंग्विस्टिक चॉविनिज्म. ये अब वो बिलीव कर रहे हैं कि हमारी लैंग्वेज तुम्हारी लैंग्वेज से ज़्यादा अच्छी है. लिंग्विस्टिक चॉविनिज्म इज द बिलीफ is the belief that linguistic chauvinism is the belief that one language is superior to another. The Prussians forcefully imposed German on French speaking Alsace and Lorraine. This shows how language is linked to identity and freedom. Even France wonders if pigeons could be synced if pigeons could be forced to sing in German, symbolizing cultural suppression. वो ये हम कर चुके हैं. यार ये रिपीट नहीं हो रहा है. ये देखो. You realize the true value of a thing when you lose it. This is a very perfect line. ऐसा ही होता है चाहे किसी भी कोई भी चीज हो, इंसान का कुछ भी हो. अगर आप पे अभी वो चीज है, आपको उसकी कदर नहीं है, जब वो चली जाएगी तभी आपको उसकी कदर होगी. दिस इज द रियलिटी ऑफ लाइफ इफ यू विल हैव अ लुक ऑन टू इट. वेट. ठीक है. The people of Alsace and Lorraine ignored their own language until the Prussians banned it. Franz regretted neglecting his lessons when he realized he could never learn French again. The villagers felt sorry for not encouraging education earlier. This highlights that we often take important things for granted until we lose them. Hmm. The order from Berlin created a great enthusiasm in the school. Comment. The Berlin order banning French from schools shocked The Berlin Order banning French from school shocked everyone, making them realize the importance of their language. Students and villagers attended the last lesson with deep regret for not having valued their language earlier. The atmosphere was solemn. The was with M. Hamel dressing formally and teaching passionately. Even Franz, who had never taken French seriously, paid close attention. The village elders joined to pay tribute to M. Hamel and their culture, emphasizing their deep love for their mother tongue. I don't think so. Anyone is in the class. Let's see. Mm-hmm. Our language is part of our culture. We are proud of it. How does the last lesson reflect this sentiment? Statement होगा वैसे तो but कोई नहीं. Sentiment भी बोल ही सकते हैं उसे. Hamel emphasizes the beauty and logic of the beauty and the logic of the French language. The villagers regretted neglecting their mother tongue and attended the last lesson as a mark of respect. Hamel's final words, "Vive la France," demonstrated his love for the country and language. This moment reinforced the idea that language is deeply tied to identity and culture. Language deeply tied to identity and culture. The mood in M. Hammel's last class was filled with regret and sadness. The school was usually quiet, and even the students who were usually inattentive listened carefully. The village elders attended the lesson, realizing that they had taken their language for granted. M. Hamel spoke passionately, making everyone aware of the importance of preserving their mother tongue. Towards the end, he was too emotional to speak and simply wrote, "We will have France," and on the board before dismissing the class. हमने कर लिया है. ये बार बार क्यों आ रहे हैं? Amhamel was dressed in formal clothes because it was his last day at school. Since French have was to be banned and replaced with German, he wanted to give his last lesson in the best way possible. It was his last farewell, so he wore his best attire and delivered his last French lesson to the students and villagers. You realize the true value of a thing only on losing it. ये भी हमने कर लिया. The order from Berlin declared that only German would be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. They shocked Franz, as he had never taken his French lesson seriously and now realized that he would never get a chance to learn his mother tongue again. ये भी कर लिया हमने. Hamel stated that it was not just France's fault for not knowing his participles. He blamed the people of Alsace and Lorraine, thinking they had plenty of time to learn. Their parents prioritized work over education, and he himself had often given holidays when he wanted to go fishing. Who did M. Hamel blame for neglecting? ठीक है. Yeah, ये वाला भी है थोड़ा. M. Hamel blamed the students, their parents, and even himself. The parents sent their children to work instead of school, while he himself did not always take teaching seriously, often assigning student tasks like watering the plants. Hmm. Franz noticed the changes around him and in a crowd was gathered around the bulletin board. The school was unusually quiet, no sounds of desk opening, lessons being repeated, no or the teacher's ruler rapping on the table. Amhamel did not scold him. Amhamel was wearing his Sunday dress, green coat, frilled shirt, and black silk hat. The backbenches were occupied by the villagers were the adults of the village, Hauser, the postmaster, and others. Hamel announced this was the last lesson in French. Franz's reaction to last lesson in French. He was shocked. He was shocked. He realized his deficiency in the language and wished to. Okay. Wow. He realized his deficiency in the language and wished he had not wasted time. He represented wasting time in his इन फ्रूटलेस एक्टिविटीज कौन सी एक्टिविटीज? fruitless activities like chasing birds' eggs, sliding on the star. He appreciated MML's efforts and accepted him with all his flaws. लिखना चाहेंगे. He suddenly wanted to impress MML with his knowledge of French. He understood why the villagers had come to school to thank MML and his service to show solidarity for the country they had lost. He expressed repentance for neglecting his language. MML laments and reflects on the reasons for the students' deficiency in French. The Germans would laugh at their inability to speak their own language. जर्मन बोलेंगे तुम अपनी ही भाषा नहीं बोल पा रहे हो कहाँ के फ्रेंच हो तुम अब जर्मन ही सीखो. It was due to their habit of postponing learning to the next day. It was too late to make amends. There was no time left to make up for the lost learning. Everyone was to blame. Parents preferred sending children to the work or farms instead of schools. He himself had given holidays and sent students to water his plants whenever he wanted to go to fishing. The story, देखो, the story is said during Franco. The story is said during Franco. The story is said during Franco-Prussian War, in which France lost Alsace and Lorraine to Prussia. Prussia imposed German language in schools. M. Hamel teaches with devotion, blames students, teachers, and parents for neglecting their mother tongue. He praises French as a clear, beautiful, and logical language. He advises the class to value their mother tongue, and as it is crucial for the cultural identity. Franz wondered when pigeons would be made to sing in German. M. Hamel ends his lesson by writing "Vive la France" on the blackboard ठीक है याद रखना फ्रैंको प्रशियन वॉर where France lost Alsace and Lorraine to Prussia, in which France lost Alsace and Lorraine. ठीक है, the story is set during Franco-Prussian War when the France lost Alsace and Lorraine to Prussia. German was imposed in schools, replacing French. Hamel teaches his final lesson with devotion, blaming students, teachers, and parents for neglecting their language. He praises French as clear, beautiful, and logical language, and advises the class to value their mother tongue as it is crucial for cultural identity. France questions if even animal would be affected by the Prussians, wondering if pigeons would be forced to sing in German. Hamel ends the classic theme. The story highlights human tendency to postpone learning only to regret it later. It also shows linguistic chauvinism as the French people were deprived of their language. The brutality of the war is also depicted, making people insensitive to emotions and culture. Hamel, okay, ये हमने कर लिया. ये भी हमने कर लिया है. हाँ, ये हमने सारे कर रखे हैं तो रिपीट क्यों हो रहा है ना. Linguistic chauvinism is the belief that one language is superior to others. The Prussian forced German upon Alsace and Lorraine, suppressing their cultural identity. Even France wonders if pigeon could be forced to sing in German, symbolizing cultural oppression. Describe the atmosphere. The atmosphere was silent and serious. The atmosphere was silent and serious. The atmosphere was silent and serious. The usual hustle and bustle was gone. Students and villagers were regretful. Hamel was emotional and patriotic. At, at the end, he simply wrote Vive la France on the blackboard. How did order from Berlin impact school that day? ये हमने कर लिया है. ये repeat हो रही हैं. The story emphasized the language is tied to identity. When French was banned, the villagers realized its importance. Hamel called French the most beautiful language, and even everyone regretted not learning it earlier. Hamel wrote "Vive la France" as a sign of patriotism and love for his country. He was too emotional to speak and used these words as his final message before leaving. Validate why M. Hamel did not scold France for being late, since it was his last day. M. Hamel was failed. हमने कर लिया. M. Hamel added the friend. ये भी हमने कर लिया ऊपर. हाँ देखो. M. Hamel made the last lesson special by wearing a special dress to the class. He got new copies for the students which had words France, Alsace written beautifully on them. Franz was shocked to know that he could not learn French anymore. He repented that he had not been serious before. He wished he had revised participles and would be able to answer Emma's question. Franz gained a sudden liking for his teacher and did not want him to leave. Not live, okay. देखो mother tongue is the common factor. कौन दे देखो mother tongue is the common factor which unites the countrymen. क्या mother tongue is the common factor which unites the countrymen. M. Hamel made the villagers realize the importance of the mother tongue. He spoke about the beauty of their mother tongue. He spoke about the beauty of the mother tongue. He spoke about the beauty of their mother tongue and the French language. He asked the class to guard it because it was the key to their freedom. So, what is the key to the freedom? It is the mother tongue. Why did the elders of the village attended last lesson? Berlin had ordered the French language would no longer be taught across the school in Alsace and Lorraine. The village elders were present in the class, which was the last lesson of the French language. They were there to pay respect to the teacher, Amhamel, who had taught there for 40 years. They regretted not having attended the school in their childhood days. What words did M. Hamel wrote? Before dismissing the class, M. Hamel wrote the following words on the blackboard. Vive la France. Vive la France, which means long live France. It was a way of showing his love and support towards his tongue and country. The order from Berlin brought all the routine hustle bustle of the school life to a standstill. The teacher was kind towards his students and taught with more patience. The students became more attentive and concerned about education. एक मैं थोड़ा सा माइंड मैप भी करा देती हूँ आपको वेट सेकंड क्यूरीज ओके जस्ट वेट अ सेकंड मिल गया शॉर्ट नोट्स। थोड़ा सा मैं भटक गई थी आई मीन भटक गई थी कि थोड़ा सा मिल नहीं रहा था ना, दैट्स व्हाई। चलो उसके लिए मेरे को कलर तो आई गेस ठीक है, यस दिस कलर इज ऑल राइट। चल ही नहीं रहा है तो दिख ही नहीं पा रहा है, थोड़ा सा डार्क करना पड़ेगा मैंने, है ना। अब भाई लाइव क्यों दौरा पड़ रहा है क्या सॉरी 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 सॉरी, बुरा मत मानना ओके। ठीक है चलो। बॉय नेम्ड फ्रांस क्या हो रहा है गाइस। हाँ, बॉय नेम्ड फ्रांस, देखो कितना ज्यादा हो गया इसका रश। 5 ही करते हैं हम। देखो बॉय नेम्ड बॉय नेम्ड फ्रांस गेट्स लेट फॉर स्कूल, not prepared for the lesson on participles given by teacher MML, afraid of scolding, thinks of bunking day because of bright weather, chirping of birds, open field, pleasant shoulders, drilling matlab practice karna, but had the strength to resist. Crowd in the before reaching school, he saw crowd in front of bulletin board. France ignores as he was getting late. Blacksmith watcher stops France. Say not to hurry, plenty of time. You have plenty of time, dear. France ignores and takes it as a fun on him. For the last 2 years, all the bad news had come from there. The lost battles, the drafts, and the orders of the commanding officer. School observation. Everything quiet as Sunday morning, Different from different from usual. ठीक है, different from usual. Different from usual. France saw classmates from outside the window. Saw M. Himmel walking up and down with iron ruler under his arms. France tries to get out inside without getting noticed. Usually great noise होता है, opening and closing of desks, repeating sound of lessons, sound of teacher rulers striking on the table. Class observation. M. Himmel saw France but told nothing. Says we were about to begin without you. Little sat down at desk after a moment, observed very different thing. Teacher had beautiful green coat, had worn beautiful green coat, frilled shirt, black silk cap, which he only wore on inspection days and prize days. So quiet classroom. Backbenches, which were always empty, were occupied by the village people sitting quietly. Old Hauser with his three with his three concerned con sorry, मैं सन्नाशय ही नहीं मैं था sorry. People sitting quietly. Old Hauser with his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several others. Everyone looked sad. Order from MML announces. Order from Berlin in school to of Alsace and Lorraine to teach only German in school from tomorrow. This is the last French lesson. Uh, came as a thunderclap to him. He hardly knew how to write, felt sorry for not learning his lesson. Books that earlier seemed to be heavyweight were now like old friends, which he did not wanted to give up. Odd. Idea of MML going away made Franz forget about his ruler and how cranky or strict he was. Realized blacksmith's worst. Realized why old man of village were sitting. While Franz was thinking about all these, his name gets called to recite participle stand-ups. Got mixed on first few words. Doesn't look up. They they felt sorry. The villager felt sorry, like they couldn't go to school. It was their way of thanking master for service for 40 years of faithful service. So respect shows respect to country. M. Hamel explains that he tells France that he will not scold France, but says that France should feel bad. Everyday students say they have plenty of time. Will do it later, but time has ended. Fellows will say, "You are a Frenchman. Germans will say, "You are a Frenchman, but still do not know how to read or write in French." EU says we all have great excuses. Taunts that parents would have made France to work for money. Says in taunting manner that it is his fault that he sent France to water gardens. And announced holidays when he wished going for fishing, when which in real says M. Hamel does not. Okay. M. Hamel talks about French language, says it is the most beautiful, clearest, and logical language in the world. French man should guard it among themselves and never forget it, because when people are enslaved and as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. M. Hamel explains M. Hamel explains grammar lesson. M. Hamel reads grammar lesson and explains. Franz amazed to see how well he understood it. I realized he never listened that carefully, and that M. Hamel had never explained with such patience. M. Hamel had new copies for them, written in beautiful round hand. Alsace, France, Alsace, France, Alsace. Looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom. Everyone to set to work very quiet. Only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them. Will they make them sing in German? Even the pigeons? Franz observes his teacher, M. Hamel, sitting motionless in his chair, gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he wanted to fix his mind how just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. 40 years he had been there in the same place, with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him. It must have broken his heart to leave it all, to hear his sister moving out in the room above, packing their trunks. But he had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last. Ending of class. Crunch. Clock struck 12. Trumpets of the Prussians returning from drill. M. Himmel stood up very pale in his chair. "My friend," said he, "my friends," but something choked him. He could not go on. He turned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, wrote as large as he could, "Vive la France," stopped and leaned his head against the wall. Without a word, he made a gesture with his hand. "School is dismissed. You may go." It is a very sad story. I'm very sad यार, है ना. फाइनली हमने एक घंटे के अंदर ये कंप्लीट कर दिया चैप्टर विद ऑल द PYQs, ऑल इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट्स. दैट्स अ वेरी गुड थिंग आई वुड से, है ना. बिकॉज एक घंटे में चैप्टर कंप्लीट करना इज अ लिटिल बिट हार्ड. चलो, थैंक यू फॉर वॉचिंग. Thanks for watching. I will meet you in my next live video or any other video. Bye bye.